Unfortunately, it's that time of year again. Kodak has announced that beginning on January 1st, there will be additional price hikes on some of their beloved films. But it's not all bad news though, because there are at least a couple of film stocks that aren't going to be affected by this and will actually be going down in price. So let's talk about what's happening to which stocks. Perhaps this is at least due in part to the fact that inflation is now a little bit more under control, but this go around at least, the price increases will mostly be confined to under 10% per stock. And the average of the increase is going to be between 5 and 8%. And there are at least a couple of film stocks that are going to see a price increase north of that 10% mark, and we'll talk about which ones that is. And all the information about these price increases come from a distributor in Europe who's got all the details. It's important to note that these are wholesale price increases. This is the price that your film retailer is paying to buy the film from Kodak. So what ends up happening in the store when you're actually buying Color Plus or Ektar or Portra, that remains to be seen. It may be more than 10%, but these are the prices that your drug dealer, film dealer, are going to be paying from Kodak. So Color Plus, Ultra Max, and Kodak Gold are going to be rising by about 8%, and that includes the multi-packs. For the longest time, those multi-packs have been a pretty good deal, and they should still be a pretty good deal because the prices are going to go up proportionally. 8% on the single rolls, 8% on the multi-packs. So if the multi-pack was discounted a little bit, you're likely to still see those same discounts. And here's a little bit of a reprieve for us, as anything branded Kodak Professional isn't going up by nearly as much. The Kodak Professional films, Ektachrome, Portra, those film stocks, they're only going to be going up by 5%. So that's pretty good news in light of all the other stuff. The biggest increase though is going to apply to Kodak Gold 200, which was released in March of 2022. This was a relatively new product put on the market by Kodak. Kodak Gold has been on the market for a long time, but the release of Kodak Gold 200, pretty new thing. But this film stock is going to see the sharpest price increase of almost 30%. I think that the price increase is so great because Kodak Gold in 120 was discounted pretty heavily at launch, I guess to get shooters in the habit of shooting gold in 120. But anyway, now that film stock is going up by 30%, so it's not going to be nearly the value that it once was. So here's some really good news. Kodak Ektar 120 is actually going to go down in price by 8%. So I mentioned some of the professional line of films, Ektachrome and Portra are going up. Well, Ektar is going down by 8%. I think that's a little comfort, as I don't know all that many folks that shoot a ton of Ektar, but all that being said, 8% price reduction, maybe we should start. Maybe we need the Oompa Loompa skin tones. I don't know. The most drastic price reduction on the list, though, is going to apply to Tri-X. And this is a great film stock. It's one of Kodak's venerable, long-standing black and white film stocks. It's great stuff. 24 frame roll of Tri-X is going to go down by 27%, and a 36 frame roll is going to go down by 21%. And it's important to note that this is the second price reduction that Kodak has applied to Tri-X over the past year. So the stuff just continues to get cheaper and cheaper, and my guess is that maybe they're trying to compete a little more with Ilford, who's got a darn near monopoly on the black and white market at this point. But it's not all good news on the black and white front though, as T-Max and Tri-X 120 films are both going to be going up in price. And these are going to be pretty significant jumps in price, as they're going to go up by almost 20%. And that's all the details we have so far about the price increases that are going to be applied to Kodak's film stocks. Unfortunately, it's very disappointing. And I'll remind you guys again that this isn't exactly what you're going to see at your local film retailer, as these are just wholesale price increases. So your miles may vary. But let's talk a little bit about what this means. Unfortunately, guys, I feel like this is a video that I've had to make too many times. Every year that passes, Kodak continues to increase their prices. I mean, it would be one thing if these film prices were going up and we could draw a straight line and say, well, that's just, they're compensating for inflation. Well, I think that, looking at the film prices versus inflation over the past few years, you could see that they're charging quite a bit more even versus inflation. So there's a little bit of money grabbing going on here. And maybe they're just trying to make their business viable. I don't know what their internal books look like. It looks like they're price gouging film photographers pretty hard. And I think it's safe to say that, film photography has been on a comeback over the past 10 years, but I think the comeback is best described as tenuous. I said that they're gouging film photographers. Well, film photographers have already had to watch the process of all of their stuff, their chemicals, their development costs, the cameras that, YouTubers like myself promote and drive up the prices. We've had to watch the prices increase 5, 10, 20 times over the past 10 years. I just have to wonder, year after year, making these videos, making the videos about Kodak's price increases, making the videos about Fuji's price increases, how long can the hobby sustain these price increases? At some point, film photography is going to be a luxury hobby that only a very few are going to be able to participate in because stuff is just so darn expensive. You know, at one point, you know, you could go out and buy a roll of film for $3 or $4. Now we're living in a world where it's not uncommon to see a roll of film going for $15 or $20. You know, and then you stack development costs on top of that. It just becomes untenable at some point. It just becomes not really worth it. That's a whole lot of money to pay to get a slightly different aesthetic. At some point, you're going to drive folks back to the realms from which they came. Cell phones, digital cameras, all that kind of stuff. It's just going to be a much better value proposition. And folks are going to stop dabbling in film photography. But let me know in the comments, are these new price increases going to keep you from shooting Kodak film anymore? Or have you already stopped? Anyway, let me know. And if you thought this video was cool, take a look at these new alternative film stocks. Maybe they'll represent a better value proposition for you. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.